Welcome to CMNtv. My name is DeWitt, a community corner. And my two friends are...
Hello, my name is Aaron Connie Castle.
Hello everyone, my name is Ryan Nicholas Gray.
Today we welcome Dr. Charlie Burton-Hoyle, sister to a person on the autism spectrum. She has focused her life and career on improving the education of people with autism and other challenging behaviors. She serves as area coordinator of the Masters of the Autism Spectrum Disorders Program at Eastern Michigan University, known as EMU. This program is based on positive behavioral supports and family, community environment. Dr. Burton-Hoyle has been at EMU since 2006. In addition, she has classroom experience as a special education teacher. Dr. Burton-Hoyle is a sought-after presenter and consultant in the area of special education, autism, and challenging behavior. As the mother of 3 boys, she has learned to reframe all behavior as communication. She brings years of experience in working with people with autism spectrum, and we warmly welcome Dr. Hoyle.
Thank you so much.
Welcome. Please tell us briefly about your family growing up.
My family growing up, I had everybody when they grow up thinks that their family's crazy, right? So I was like everybody else. I thought, wow, this is a different family. I had 3 big sisters, and then I was the 4th daughter. When I was 10 years old, my mom and dad brought home a baby brother to me. And we always knew something was kind of different with him. He didn't act quite the same as other little babies. And then when he was 2, my mom really recognized that he had something wrong, and he wasn't talking, and he just seemed so unhappy, and he cried a lot, and he started doing things like this, like he would rock, and he would cry, and he would line things up all around the house, and if they tried to get him to do something else, he would scream and tantrum, and it was just so there I was, you know, I was 12 at that time, and I thought, whoa, what's going on here? So even though I was just his big sister, I kind of had to go through a lot with my parents so that we could figure out what, did he have a disability, what was wrong, and what could we do to help him. So a lot of my growing up years was focused on learning about autism and figuring out ways to help my brother. I'm a sister, so I treated him like a brother. So I taught him how to roller skate, I taught him how to swim, I made him learn how to set the table so that it wasn't just me having to do it, and because that wasn't fair. And and so when I went to college, then I knew that I wanted to be a teacher, and I have my brother to thank for that. And so what it was like growing up, it was different. I mean, it seemed like different because I've raised 3 boys now, and there's always a lot of chaos. I mean, if you 3 guys were my boys, there would be a lot of chaos and silly stuff and nonsense going on. So it was the same in that way. But with my brother, there was kind of a fear, kind of like, whoa, what's going on, and what can we do to help him? So that's kind of what it was like to grow up. But it made me know exactly that I wanted to be a teacher, and it made me know exactly that I wanted to always treat parents so well and communicate with them so well, because you know what? If a teacher says something wrong to the mom or to the child, it upsets the whole family. And I teach teachers now, and I tell them those same sorts of things. So it's like, if I didn't have a brother with a disability, where would I be now? You know, it made me a whole lot better as a person.
Please tell us about your speaking role on different college campuses. About your speaking role on different college campuses.
My speaking role on different college campuses?
Uh-huh.
I teach my students, and I have graduate students mainly, and they are teachers, or they're going to be teachers, or they're principals, or they're supervisors. And so I don't really go to other college campuses to teach. I just kind of focus on teaching them. I teach a lot of people about autism, but and go different places and do that. But I don't like have a schedule where I go to different college campuses and speak. Like a comedian or something. So, oops,
Now, Dr. Hoyle.
Yes.
You're a professor at Michigan University, right?
Yes.
So tell us about your classroom teaching in the field of education, because many people like me, for example, I've been in school for about many years, Dr. Hoyle, and I've learned a lot about myself. But, when you're an expert, what are some things you teach your students to really apply themselves in education today?
Well, a very important thing that I teach all my students is that behavior is communication, and that no matter who they're working with and who they're supporting, and I do use those terms, supporting, because they should think of that they are in the role of supporting you so that you learn the most and achieve your maximum potential in school. And that if they're wondering about how their student is doing, that they need to just kind of stop and look at them and see what they're doing as opposed to what they're saying. Because a lot of times people say things. You might say you're fine, you might say you understand, but that doesn't really mean you're fine or that you understand what's going on in the classroom. So to like really interact and work with that student so that you see that they're doing well. And then also following up with the family to see, so that they can see. So you let's say if I'm a teacher, I want to make sure that I let your folks know what I worked on this week, and that you had success with this, but that maybe they could help you a little bit with that and make sure they know that. So that's one thing.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Tell us about your training for those with challenging behavior.
Well, I feel very strongly about people with challenging behavior, in that they're misunderstood, and that there's always a reason. 99.9% of the time, there's always a reason why somebody's acting out or having a problem. And if we, again, kind of going back to the behavior as communication, if we look at them and then we work with the family, maybe somebody isn't able to tell us that they have an earache or that their throat hurts. So we need to kind of, we need to go to the people that are the experts. Who are the experts on the individual? It is their family. They would know how they act when they're sad or happy, or their earache, their ear hurts or their throat hurts. So we have to figure out why somebody's upset when they have challenging behavior. After that, then we figure out what's a shortcut, what's a way that they can do what they want to do, and not disrupt other people. For instance, I'm going to give you an example because I just had this one, is that the student at school was on a schedule, and they took him to the bathroom at certain times because that was on his schedule. But sometimes he didn't need to go, but he didn't have the words. He couldn't come up with the words to say, hey, I don't need to go. And so they would force him in the bathroom, and so the student would run away because he didn't want to go to the bathroom and he didn't need to go to the bathroom. And so then everybody would chase after him, and they would try to restrain him, try to hold on to him and hold him down. and which is so stupid, right? Because he didn't need to go to the bathroom. So why are we creating these problems? So it's like if we watched the student and they knew what they were supposed to do, but then we taught them a way to say, no, I don't need to go, then we could avoid a lot of trouble. And I'm all about avoiding trouble.
Have you worked on committees developing laws dealing with autism spectrum?
That's it.
Yes, I have been on committees about laws, and I think one of the most important committees I was on was when in Michigan we changed the autism spectrum disorders definition, and it used to be considered autistic impairment, and it just hit a very narrow group of people. And autism is a spectrum, so there's people that talk, there's people that don't talk. And there were a lot of people that needed help that had autism that they weren't eligible. And so I fought real hard so that folks that had language and that folks that had language and folks that had Asperger's syndrome, which is on the autism spectrum, could qualify for autism in the schools.
Dr. Hoyle, so what are some topics that you call upon to lecture?
When I usually get called to talk about autism and how autism looks, and it's because I've had a lifetime of working with folks with autism and my brother that I can kind of I can explain it in sort of a simple way, and that helps people. I talk about a lot of things about behavior. I talk about what positive behavioral supports are, and positive behavioral supports are the things that just make sense, And I talk about families and why we need to always include families in any sort of education or planning for an individual's life. I talk about self-determination in that it's that nothing about us without us, and so that if anybody's going to be making any plans for any of you guys, that you have to be the main people involved in that. I talk about person-centered planning because that's something that's real important to me, and I talk a lot about alternatives to seclusion and restraint. And that's I'm just finishing up a curriculum in alternatives to seclusion and restraint, just because I just don't want one more person with a disability to be manhandled.
What might be some of the challenging behaviors that need trained individuals for support?
Oh, that's an excellent question. There are a lot of times when, again, if somebody doesn't have verbal language, they can't just say, hey, excuse me, I'm hungry or I'm thirsty, so then they run away. They run into the kitchen, and sometimes people don't understand that we should just get them what they want. So there's running away. There's a fancy word for this, which I think is silly. It's called elopement, but it really just means somebody's running away.
Elopement.
People that are that have maybe they bite, maybe they're really frustrated, so everybody ignores them, and so then they just grab somebody and bite. And sometimes, for whatever reasons, and it doesn't matter where people are on the spectrum, a college student with Asperger's just the other day got really frustrated and spit. So sometimes people, for whatever reason, they might bite, they might spit, they might run away. They might get so upset that they, that they just kind of shut down. They just put their head down and don't talk. And again, there's always a reason for why they do that, but those are kind of some of the main things. And also, people will not take their medication, or and so then people want to try to make them take their medication. So those are some of the main things that people might come in and I might give them help with.
I was in school, I used to hear about the IEP all the time and the person-centered planning. So how can these describe and legally guide one's treatment with this diagnosis? Because It's important. These are two important things. So how do you feel about these two important items?
Okay, the IEP.
Yes.
So let's talk about that first. And
Right.
there cannot be enough training and enough reminders to teachers and administrators on what the correct approach is in doing an IEP. The federal law has been around that mandates IEP since 1975. Wow. And so that's a long time, and yet, you know what? That I teach my teachers I've got some principals, I've got some supervisors, I've got people that are teachers that don't know the right way to do an IEP. So I don't care what level of the student is, a graduate student or an undergraduate student. And there's a federally and state funded grant in Michigan called Michigan Alliance for Families. And they are trained parent trainers, and they are like the mouthpiece for the Department of Ed. And they give wonderful, wonderful workshops on the content of the IEP. And the important thing that everybody forgets about, everybody thinks about goals. Well, you have to start with what your needs are. And that means, like, if you're in like 12th grade biology class, what would you need in order to be successful? You'd need maybe somebody to help you write. You'd need somebody to, whatever it would be that you would need. So needs are something that people kind of skip over. And unless you start the IEP with needs, then you're in big trouble. So people don't seem to understand that. And then in person-centered planning, that's not a mandate for school. They don't have to do that in schools. But I want teachers to know about it so that they can help students and families be ready for when they enter the community. And if they get any community mental health services, all that starts with a person-centered plan once they're eligible.
Tell us how the autism educational need is included in teacher training programs.
So how is educational need included with autism? Well, because they learn, when my students, and I'm teaching an introduction to autism spectrum disorders right now, and they have to they have to start by knowing what the Michigan Department of Ed definition is. And they have to really talk about it and analyze it. So they have to know that part. Then they have to learn to know how autism looks in each of their students with that educational label. So what I always tell them is, I said, put your autism goggles on and see how does that person exhibit socialization problems, communication problems, or academic problems, because they're all different. Everybody's different, and everybody shows it in a little bit different way. So they have to look at each person, and they have to think, okay, now if this person was in the general ed environment, what would they need? And again, going back exactly, you guys ask great questions here. It all starts with need. It all starts with need, and everybody's needs are different.
Because we are not labels. We belong on charts.
Yes, right. Okay. Very good.
So what you mean by autism glasses is to trust It's to try to see the world like they see it?
I want them to see the world like their student sees it. And so, for instance, I'll give you an example. I was in a classroom, and the kid kept going underneath the table and laying on the table. And they kept trying to pull him out of the table, and it was just a sweaty conflict, and everybody was all mad and trying to pull this kid out. And so when I went in there, I said, wait a minute, get out of here, all y'all. I kick everybody out generally when there's that kind of thing, because people get really mad. They get mad that the kid isn't doing what they say. So I got on my back, and I got under the table with the kid to see what was he looking at. You know what he was looking at?
What?
It's people, you know how people sometimes stick gum and all that kind of stuff underneath tables and desks. Are not supposed to, but they do. And it was all shiny, and it was iridescent, and it was beautiful. It was beautiful. And so when I saw it, I thought, okay, we learn about this little boy then. We learned that he liked looking at those kinds of pretty colors. So we're going to get other pretty colors. We don't need old gum,
No.
but we can get other pretty colors, and we can have that as part of what his routine is. Maybe he can have like have you ever seen those rulers that like change and like they're kind of, but maybe he can have that on his desk, and so every once in a while he can kind of flip that and look at it. So I mean, it's if I would not have gotten on the floor and looked up to see what he was looking at, I wouldn't have known. Okay, so that's what I mean by putting the autism goggles on.
Okay. What should one look for in selecting an agency?
Oh, well, I think you want to find an agency that looks at you for what your strengths are, what your interests are, and how you want to be a part of the community. And it's an agency that you want to have is one that wants you to grow. They want you to grow. They want you to be successful. So that's what you want to look for. If you have an agency that wants to just try to put you here, put you there, pigeonhole you, you don't want that.
Okay.
Dr. Hoyle, many families out there in Michigan are trying to advocate for their family members, because how does a family look at autism trainer to add a system in the person-centered planning IEP and person-centered planning process? Because when I was in school, people just told me I couldn't have my job anymore, and it was just what made me angry. That they said to me, "Ryan, I'm afraid you're going to have to give your job up." And I said, "No way." It really made me feel upset when people tell me that.
Right. Well,
It made me feel really, really sad in myself.
yeah. Well, I think that there was a revolution in Michigan that where people and families said, we do not want you choosing how we're going to live our lives. And back in the olden days, that was still at the beginning of the 90s, they would say, your IQ is this, therefore you will live here, you will do this, you will go to this workshop. You sit with 100 other people in a noisy place and put things together that you're not interested in. And everybody got mad and they said, no more, no more. And so that's why person-centered planning got in the mental health code, so that you would have a choice. And so that we would start that off by looking at your strengths, looking at your needs, and saying, what do you want? And how can we give it to you? And Jim Haveman, who's now Department of Community Health Director, he was in the Department of Community Health when person-centered planning got in the law, or got in the mental health code rather, which is the law for mental health. So he's somebody who really understands what person-centered planning is, because he was around for the battle to get it in.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's another good thing that happened in the 90s.
Yeah, well, yes, it is. It really is. Yeah, when in the mental health code, 95.
All the teaching credentials different from those heading to a career dealing with the autism diagnosis?
Well, that is another very good question. You guys have nothing but great questions. Is that currently to get an autism endorsement, you have to get a a general ed certificate. So you're going to teach elementary or high school. Then you have to get a special education endorsement in something else. And so autism is a second endorsement currently, but guess what? This will be news here first. We're gonna develop and begin an undergraduate program in autism spectrum disorders. Dr. Fries and I at EMU are developing that right beginning now.
Okay.
So,
As an advocate, do you have a fee scale?
do I have a fee scale? No.
No.
I do not.
Yeah.
I do not. I should have one, but no.
Dr. Hoyle, what do you see as the future of those with autism, on the autism spectrum this year?
So what do I see in the future for people with autism?
Yes.
Well, I see, it kind of depends on how you look at it. Autism Speaks and the Center for Disease Control, well, the Center for Disease Control came out with these numbers. 1 in 88 people are being, identified as having autism. And so there's two ways to look at it. There's like an Autism Speaks, and other agencies are like, oh no, 1 in 88 people have autism. But the way I look at it is, I think it's insulting to think of that as a bad thing, because what if we said 1 out of 88 people are going to be like Aaron? Wouldn't that hurt your feelings? Because there's lots of great things about you. And so I choose to look at it like, all right, if it's 1 in 88 people, then there's 1 in 88 people who have a different way of looking at life. They have different sorts of creativities, and they have, maybe there are some different kinds of needs, but I don't look at it as a bad thing. So it kind of depends on which way, what is your take? Is your take that autism's a bad thing, or is it that autism is just a different way of living?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's a different way. It's a different way of living.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. But there's a beauty and a logic to autism that it's really when you are around and you respect the autism, the logic is great, really. They want a life that they can depend on. They want to know that if they're driving down this road, that they won't have to get off on this exit ramp and go another way, which makes all of us mad.
Exactly.
What can one do to be alert and to intervene to make sure the educational system is helpful?
Well, I think that we need to continue to make certain that everybody associated with schools, teachers, administrators, are all learning the correct way to do IEPs. And just a quick example is that when you go to an IEP, there's one way it should go. It should be needs, goals, what are the accommodations needed, and then what are the services and supports, okay? That's the way you do it. You don't start out an IEP with, well, I guess David's going to be at the center for his educational program. That's the wrong way to do it.
9.
Right, exactly. The right way is, let's start and look at each person as an individual.
How could you be reached?
How could I be reached? I could be reached through Eastern Michigan University. If you go to their website and you do a search, Sally Burton-Hoyle, and you'll find me there.
Okay.
Okay.
How can an interview help a family select a support coordinator?
Oh, a family can choose a supports coordinator. I think that is so important, and that choice is in the law or in the mental health code is really important. So first of all, I think that we kind of have a gut check. When we sit down with people, we kind of like them or we don't, and that's okay, everybody does that. But I think that how you can tell is if they are paying attention to you. And I think that families should always, when they interview support coordinators and case managers or whatever, they should ask them about the successes that individuals that they've supported have had. You know, for example, say, could you tell me a little bit about the successes that people you've supported have had? Have you had anybody that's worked, that has lived in their own home with support? What are the kinds of things that have been happy to, that you've seen in the lives of people you've supported? And make them do some of the talking, and you'll find out a lot. And I chose to do that when I helped my brother. We interviewed agencies for his staff, and that's what I did. I said, tell me about people you've supported and how they've been happy. Tell me about challenging behaviors that individuals have had and how you've worked with that. So they kind of, pretty soon then I could listen and kind of go like, cross them off the list or want to talk to them more.
It has been wonderful to having you here today, Dr. Hoyle. Autism awareness is a vital diagnosis. It is growing today that more and more babies are being identified with this disability. There is a greater need for general information public to better understand and better knowledge of they can treat and support in the public.
Right.
It's public to know and more engaging and supportive of those with this challenge. Yeah. It is just being grand, meeting you and learning your devotion to focus on those with the autism spectrum. It has been devoted your life's work to this goal. To say to you, Dr. Hoyle, to achieve your personal goals, and has been a blessing of hundreds of others along this way. Dr. Hoyle, thanks for coming down. I'm Ryan Nicholas Ray.
Thank you so much.
I'd like to say I'm DeWitt, and thank you for watching CMNtv. My two friends are again are.
My name is Connie Castle. Thanks for watching CMNtv.
I'm Nicholas Ray. Thanks for watching CMNtv.
But make sure your voice is heard. And have a good night.
Bye, folks.